Raider! Oakland, LA, Oakland, Vegas, Raider Nation, wherever, forever! You got your old Uncle Mosh and Raiders Fan Radio from Murph's Man Cave, taking a lighter journey into the dark side. Sit back, put your feet up, pop a top, and enjoy the ride. Here we go!
Look left, look right, Bolitnikov, a leaking pass, touchdown!
We miss you, we love you, and we'll see you in the Hall of Fame.
When you have great coaches, then after you have great coaches, you get great players, you have a great organization, and you tell them one thing, just win, baby.
Way up the middle, intercepted Filipiano at the 50, time running down, Oakland football, and I think Oakland victory.
The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most zany, unbelievable, absolutely impossible dream of a play. Well, I love this team. I think this team can win. I think this team can win.
What is up, Raider Nation? Your old buddy Murph back once again for another what we hope to be fantastic episode of Raiders Fan Radio. We are back for another RFR Conversation here on Raiders Fan Radio. So we've had a good time getting to know some folks and kind of doing these one-off interviews. And I thought nothing better than in Chiefs week to have an RFR conversation with a Chiefs fan, but I would only agree to it under the terms in which I had Raiders fan backup. So I'm going to welcome to the show first my Raiders brethren. If you guys are familiar with him, you've heard him numerous times now here on Raiders Fan Radio. Kevin, the Raider nerd. Welcome to Raiders Fan Radio, Kevin.
Thank you for having me back again. And trust me, I would not go into this conversation without backing you up, buddy. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that because I'm kind of asking you to back me up against family because we are also welcoming your co-host, your friend, your co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network and Chiefs fan, Kyle Wagner. Welcome, Kyle, the Raiders Fan Radio. What's up, man?
Well, like a typical Raiders fan, you have to cheat and go 2-on-1. That's the only way you can get a win.
hey, man, especially the way we're playing. That's the way we need to.
Somehow I was watching Heidi and I ended up in a Raider podcast. I want to know how that happened.
Hey, when we do couch potato theater, I'm going to expect that Heidi is the movie of choice. Okay.
So it's great to be here. I as a Chiefs fan, I just took pity on the Raiders for this. I feel bad for you about when Mahomes throws 10 touchdowns this week. So,
oh my gosh! All right, you gotta trust me, Kyle. You'll have plenty of opportunity to take the shots at us, and they will be many, I'm sure. But before we get to it, though, let's tell folks a little bit about you. As I mentioned, you all are both the co-founders of the Phantom Podcast Network. You have a litany of amazing shows on your network. In relation to football, you do a show called the Endzone that you all have been so gracious to welcome me on for a couple of times, but you do a whole bunch of stuff over there. You guys do so many shows, I can't keep up. So Kyle, tell us a little bit about what you all do over there at the Phantom Podcast Network, and then please tell us and tell Raider Nation how, if they should ever want to contact a Chiefs fan, how can they do that?
Well, of course, over at the Fandom Podcast Network, Kevin and I started that. Believe it or not, we're getting ready to head into year 4 already of this thing. So Kevin and I came up with, we wanted to do podcasts by fans for fans. So we cover so many different things. It started off with just doing kind of a weekly pop culture show covering a little bit of everything. Then we came up with this idea of doing a look back, a flashback. We're going through the time warp, and that's what came to the time warp, where we go back, we pick a year, we talk about the movies, some of the things going on with that. Of course, Kevin being the Highlander fan that he is, and with our fellow co-founder at that time, we did a little Highlander podcast called Blood of Kings, which has turned into something very special, and all the props to Kevin and, of course, our good friend Norman C. Lau for that. We also cover Doctor Who. We cover Star Trek and the Orville. We cover B movies. We cover everything. But it's all about having fun, giving something to the fans that's from the fans, and we just have a blast with it. We have Kevin and I are big football fans. we got the Raiders Chiefs thing going. We decided to do the Endzone as our football show because we have fun, of course. And Kevin, our trademark mediocre fantasy football advice.
That's right. And we got to give a shout out to the Hair Metal podcast. I've had you on twice now, Murph, so I appreciate that. Newest episode is going to be dropping later this week with you and your lovely wife, Anna.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, absolutely. You guys, all your shows are great. There's something for everybody, right? Regardless of what you're a fan of, you can find something to fanboy out on your network. And yes, music is a big one in our house. And so thank you for welcoming us on that show, man. That was definitely a lot of fun doing Guns N' Roses and Skid Row, man. Like two of my all timers right there, man. That was great. You know what is funny is that, and I want to turn this into Hair Metal Podcast Part 2, Kevin, but I feel like we left a lot of meat on the bone. I feel like it was like one of those shows where we got done and I'm like, oh man, I forgot to talk about this, or I forgot to bring that up, or I forgot to ask Kevin what he thought about this, or I forgot to ask Anna about that.
When you talk about those two bands and you only have an hour or so, you could go on and on and on. But, I think we did a really good job covering those two bands. And it was great to have your wife's insight and talking about her fandom with those bands.
Right on, man. Yeah, that was definitely a lot of fun. So check them out. So where can we find? So Kyle, tell us where we can find the Fandom Podcast Network. How can people get a hold of you and subscribe, most importantly, to all of your shows?
Well, you can find the Fandom Podcast Network first and foremost on our homepage at fpnet.podbean.com. Of course, you can also use the Podbean app on your mobile devices, but we're also on iTunes, Stitcher. If you're an Android device user, you can find us on Google Play, and we just recently were added to Spotify as well. So we're all over the place. If you want to find us, you can find us at FanPod Network on Facebook. You can find me personally at @KyleW on Facebook. As far as Instagram, you can find me on @KyleFandom. We're always open to the fans and love to hear from you. Kevin, where can the people find you too, since we got you here?
On Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at Spartan_Phoenix.
All right, good deal. All right, guys. So before we jump into, and we want to, yes, we're going to ask Kyle about his fandom. We're going to ask him about the origins of his fandom. But real quick, I want to ask you, Kevin, about the significance of this game. Is there a more heated rival for our team? And our team has a lot of rivals. There's a lot of rivals for the Raiders. Is the Chiefs number one? Are they the most hated rival?
It is for a particular reason. And I know you've talked about your hatred for the Donkeys, and I get that. But to me, the Chiefs are the biggest rival, not because I don't like the Donkeys. I don't respect them. I don't like the Chargers. I don't respect them. I don't like the Chiefs, but I respect the Chiefs. And there's a big difference there. So when it becomes into I hate the Chiefs because they're a big rivalry, but I respect them. I respect their heritage. I respect Andy Reid and what he's been able to do lately. But and to me, that's what really kind of amps up this rivalry, because if there's any team that I really fear in the AFC West, it is the Chiefs. But like we've said, and I've talked to Kyle about this, and we've had you on recently, when you put these two teams together and you throw out the records, type of situation, you really do with these two teams.
So Kyle, then let me ask you. So, obviously the Raiders have not been what we hoped they were going to be this year. And 2 years ago, we were a playoff team, and the Chiefs have been playing well now for a little while. You're back-to-back division champions. What are your thoughts? Is knowing that the Chiefs are kind of like, if they're not number one, they're certainly second or third on our call sheet. How do you feel about the Raiders? Do you have that same sense of rivalry with the Raiders as a Chiefs fan?
Yeah, I really do. The thing about it is, I think even more so than the Chargers or Broncos, the history of these two teams. And I mean, when you look back, you're talking about even an ownership with Al Davis and the late Lamar Hunt as well, two of the all-time greatest owners in NFL history. And it just goes back. And I mean, you look back even when the age of the Super Bowl, when that first came out, it was Chiefs Raiders versus an AFC rivalry that really was right up there. It was one of those things that's, Raiders Pittsburgh, Raiders Chiefs, Chiefs going to the first two Super Bowls, winning the second one, the Raiders following up shortly thereafter. And I think with those two teams too, I've always made this joke with Kevin about the AFC West being the incest division. Once you're in it, you can't ever get out of it. But it is especially true. I mean, when you look at Chiefs and Raiders players who have bounced back and forth between those two teams, especially you look like with Marcus Allen when Marcus Allen went to Kansas City, or a longtime outstanding defensive cornerback Albert Lewis went to Oakland. I mean, there's always been that rivalry, and that, you know, and I think we all agreed we hate the Donkeys, but
the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I think there's that really, like, you win. It's something special when it's Chiefs Raiders week, but I do think at the end of the game, there is a respect for the opponent across the way, because it's always a hard fought battle. I can think of maybe a few times where on either side has been a big blowout, and some of the craziest things in the world happen in Chiefs Raiders game. Heck, look at last season.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you brought up a few points there, because later on I do want to ask you about some of the Raiders Chiefs connections, and I also want to ask you about the some of the most memorable games. Before we get to that, now we've had Kevin on a few times. We've talked to Kevin about his fandom, kind of the origin of his Raiders fandom, where it came from, what drives him to put on those amazing costumes and be the super fan of the Raiders that he is. But Kyle, let's talk to you about the origin of your fandom, as you know, as much as a Raiders fan would want to hear. Okay. So remember your audience, but we do want to know about you, and we respect you as a fan. And so tell us, where does it start for you? How does one become a Chiefs fan?
Well, in this case, it comes from my dad. My dad grew up in Missouri. He actually helped build Arrowhead Stadium at the time when it was built. And he then relocated to Alaska. And growing up in Alaska, where you don't really have a home professional sports team, and I mean, you really don't even have a state professional sports team of any kind. It's not like, oh, well, I live in Ohio, I can root for Cincinnati or Cleveland, even though I don't necessarily live in that city. In this case, what would happen was a lot of Alaskans will either adopt the Seahawks or maybe the Denver Broncos as one of their teams. Like the California teams are very popular. And as I grew up, my dad kind of raised me on a Chiefs fan. But also, when I was first introduced to football, it was when the 49ers were really in their prominence with Montana and Rice and everything like that. And we'd get a lot of 49ers games on TV. So I really became a fan of Joe Montana and how he played football. But I was a fan of the Chiefs. But at the time, I'll be honest, the Chiefs were not good, and for a good portion of the 80s. It wasn't really until the end of the 80s when Schottenheimer came on, and you got Christian Okoye and Derek Thomas and started that run. So I became, you know, my dad really introduced me to the Chiefs during then, because I could actually see them on my TV. But I was also a big fan of the way Joe Montana played. And then when Joe Montana got traded to the Chiefs, that really just made it easy to, you know, fully jump on the bandwagon. They're on TV all the time. But, you know, my dad would tell me the stories of the team growing up and his experience, talk a lot about Len Dawson and Hank Stram and those kind of things. And it just kind of developed from there. And what actually kind of helped in that aspect too was one of my best friends growing up, a good friend of mine named Chris Vaughn, was a huge Raiders fan. So we kind of had that fun back and forth rivalry. And what's so funny is throughout my life, I mean, a lot of my best friends I keep coming across as Raider fans. Kevin, my partner in podcasting, I have a roommate, and he's a lifelong Raiders fan as well. So, you know, it seems like I can't get away from you guys. It's like a nightmare or something like that. But, you know, and plus it's such a great, like you said, it's such a great rivalry. And, you know, the thing with the Chiefs is it's kind of you almost have a love-hate relationship with the Chiefs, because they've teased us so many times. And, you know, we've had some great teams, and we've been either killed by Lynn Elliott's or Schottenheimer football calls. And I can say right here, right now, this is a special Chiefs team. I know. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if we can win the Super Bowl with the way our defense is playing. But for the first time, honestly, in my lifetime, I feel like we have a quarterback who's going to be our quarterback and be an all-pro quarterback for the next 10, 12 years. And I think that's something, as a Chiefs fan, it's always been a Dave Craig, a Joe Montana at the end of his career, Steve Bono, Elvis Gerbach, somebody's kind of leftovers. And for the first time, I really feel like maybe since even Trent Green, who was kind of a leftover from the Rams, but Vermeil brought him, that we have a homegrown quarterback that's going to grow with us as a team, and somebody who we can build the team around at quarterback and be set for a long time.
That's interesting. So, you know, you brought up Patrick Mahomes. So, Kevin, let me ask you this. Who's your favorite Muppet?
animal.
But Mahomes has animal style hair. I'll agree to that.
Yeah, so I'm joking. Patrick Mahomes has been made fun of quite a bit by Raider Nation and otherwise for his voice, and they compare him to Kermit the Frog.
His own teammates are the one who call him Kermit.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. But Kevin, let me ask you. But when and thank you, Kyle. That's awesome, man. And it's funny how fandom, regardless, a lot of times it comes back to family for us, right? Is that, and it could be fandom of anything. You guys know that with all the different fandoms you have. Like, I'm a big Star Wars fan because one of the first movies I remember was my dad taking me to Empire Strikes Back. Like, one of the first times I ever remember doing anything with my dad was going and seeing that movie with him. So it's like, whether it be a baseball game or a football game or a movie or whatever, we tie so many of our fandoms back to when we were kids and back to our early family experiences. So that's awesome to hear that from you, Kyle. Kevin, as far as the origin of for you, again, we kind of know your origin story as a Raider fan. What about the origins of this rivalry? Well, where do you kind of remember your first awareness? For me, it was NFL films because I wasn't old enough. So it was like kind of seeing what it used to be like back in the days in the 70s and whatnot. How about for you?
Kyle hit it on the head there. They weren't really good in the 80s, and so it wasn't, when I became a Raider fan, there wasn't the rivalry that, it eventually became, I guess, maybe more with the Broncos at the time. But it didn't really hit home for me when we started losing, when we lost Marcus Allen to the Chiefs, and he came back and scored the touchdown record or whatever it was that hurt, so that's when it really kind of started. The rivalry really started to hit home for me, and then you saw Montana go over there as well. But to me, the only reason I've ever had any interest in the Chiefs was, when it came to fantasy football. and Kyle, I got to ask you, what happened to Priest Holmes? Did they just run him into the ground until he was done?
Pretty close. He had a hip injury that really kind of think of it not quite the level of a Bo Jackson hip injury.
Remember, he was like the number one quarterback for like 4 years, the number one running he would draft in fantasy, and he was a beast.
Here's the kicker of that: the year Priest Holmes broke out in fantasy football, and really, I had got him like very late in the draft. So I had a team and I had the number one pick in that year. So I had a team with Marshall Faulk and Priest Holmes at running back.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I hope you won that league. Yeah. That's pretty, so the Chiefs, have had a long history of some pretty good running backs. Christian Okoye and Barry Ward. You mentioned Priest Holmes, of course, Marcus Allen, as we mentioned. And Kevin, that was a really cool answer about how, because that was a huge deal having Marcus go over to the Chiefs. Talk about an FU to Al Davis, man. Yeah. Having him go over there, or vice versa, whatever. But it was an FU to everybody. But Kyle, let's assume that that's the most significant exchange between these two teams. You mentioned them, you call them the incest division. We've had a lot of exchange of players go back and forth over the years. Assuming that is your answer for that's the biggest one. What's after that? Is it Rich Gannon, Rodney Hudson? You mentioned Albert Lewis. Like what other significant player? For me, to give you my answer, Rodney Hudson, maybe it's just because it's recent, but he's our best player right now. Forget best center. I mean, he's amazing. But what do you think? What's the biggest name after Marcus?
Rodney Hudson's up there because I hated to see him go because he was talented. I would have to say honestly, I think it's Albert Lewis because Albert Lewis was a longtime Chief and easily one of the most underrated quarterbacks of that era. He was silky smooth as a quarterback, and play there. Rich Gannon stings because Rich Gannon wasn't a Chief long enough, but he should have been. And you ask any Chiefs fan to this day, and they will say it was one of the most irritating things that ever happened. And it was another Marty Schottenheimer thing. He had to stick with Elvis Gerbach over Rich Gannon when Rich Gannon was by far the better player. I mean, it was so far. He cost us in the playoffs because he chose to sit Rich Gannon, who had played amazing for Kansas City that whole season because Elvis Gerbach was healthy, and then Gerbach stunk it up in the playoffs. And when I saw him leave, to go to the Raiders, I was crushed because I was like, we're getting rid of the wrong quarterback. And I think any real Chiefs fan is going to tell you that was one of those ones that stung, because here we had a quarterback who was playing well for us, and we're going with this yet another 49er retread quarterback.
Wait, we're doing this again?
Yeah.
Kevin, what do you think is the most memorable game for you as a fan? You know, we had a pretty electrifying one this last, Thursday Night Football last year with Derek Carr, pinning that touchdown pass to Crabtree in the front corner of the end zone. Man, that, looking good underneath the Thursday night lights.
It's got to be the one last year. What was it, on Thursday night?
Yep.
I think it was.
Yep.
There's all those defensive penalties by the Chiefs, and the Raiders just kept trying to throw it in there. That has to be it right there.
It is for me too, I think, but I feel like I'm almost like being brand new by thinking that, because there's so many games in the history of this rivalry. But I think it's something that you both touched on, is that they haven't really both been great at the same time in recent history. It's either been one's up and one's down, or vice versa. Kyle, what do you think? What's the most memorable Raiders-Chiefs game to you?
I think as far as both teams being of high quality, I would either go there, or there was a game back in the 90s, and it was the year before Bo Jackson got hurt. And this was when Christian Okoye was kind of at his prime. And that's when that's when the Chiefs were running with like Derek Thomas and Neil Smith, and the Raiders at the time, Hostetler was your quarterback at the time. And there were some pretty good rivalry games in there. One game I will always remember, though, and I think it's because it was kind of the game that put the Chiefs kind of back into a regular playoff rotation, was the year that you guys decided you needed to start Todd Marinovich in the playoffs.
Oh boy.
He had to go there.
You had to go there. You brought up the wrong number 12, Kyle. The wrong left-handed number 12 too at that.
But I think as far as crazy level games, by far last season's Thursday Night Football game, at least in the last 15 years, was probably one of the craziest NFL games, period. But to add in the fact that Chiefs Raiders, and it was so back and forth and so crazy, that's always going to be up there in that pantheon. And like you said, it's one of those things where it never seems like it's longer than just 2 or 3 years where the Raiders and Chiefs are good at the same time.
The other one for me is, and we talked about this on your all's show, the Endzone, just a little bit ago, was the 41-38 overtime win for the Raiders in 1999, when the Raiders, under new coach John Gruden, had a chance to go into Arrowhead and knock off the Kansas City Chiefs and take you out of the playoffs and take us out of the playoffs. And Darrell Russell famously said, "We going home and they going home," as he walked off the field. And that was a big deal. Like, I remember as a Raider fan feeling like, wow, like we're for real back. Like, we are, if we can go into KC in the last week of the season and win a game like that. Like, Kevin, do you remember that? Do you remember feeling that sense of like, this thing actually might be real this time?
Yeah, you kind of felt something was special with Gruden going on here,
Yeah.
So that was definitely, because that's a big accomplishment at that time, to go into KC and pull that off.
Well, I want to bring up a point to you guys, because I think actually that the Raiders and the Chiefs have a lot of, at least I would say, I'll go with since the late 80s to now, have a lot of the same kind of experiences in the playoffs with heartbreak. I mean, you look at what happened with the Raiders with fumble, tuck rule, the year before that when Tony Saragusa fell on top of Rich Gannon and smashed him. Obviously,
I wouldn't say fell on him.
Obviously, as my roommate, who is a diehard Raiders fan, calls it, the year they had the dumbest coach in the world. And of course, that was the year you guys actually went to the Super Bowl and he didn't change a thing facing John Gruden. Or Kansas City had the whole winning.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, we have forgotten all about it, Kyle. Thanks. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, no, I'm going to be grateful for myself. The whole year where we had the best record in home field advantage, and Lynn Elliott missed like 5 field goals against the Jim Harbaugh Colts. How many heartbreaks over the years to the Pittsburgh Steelers, where we had the game and Pittsburgh somehow pulls something out of their butt thanks to a penalty flag or something like that. So I think truthfully, the Raiders and Chiefs over the last 20 years or so have had a lot of the same kind of heartbreaks in the playoffs.
That's a great point. And when you look at the all-time, meetings and kind of the tail of the tape for these teams, the Chiefs have a distinct advantage in terms of all-time in the series. 65 wins for the Chiefs and 53 of those for the Raiders. Postseason results as far as teams playing each other, you all have won twice and we won once. But the most important thing is Super Bowls, right? And thankfully, Kevin, we still have the advantage in Super Bowls. And even if the Chiefs win this year, year will still have the advantage in Super Bowls. And this is the thing that really was surprising when you really start diving into the wins. As down as the Raiders have been, and aside from the years with John Gruden, we've essentially haven't been good year in, year out since 1983, where you feel like the Chiefs have kind of been good now for a while, at least competitive on a regular basis, but they still don't have like any postseason results, nor a whole bunch of like, other than the two division championships I mentioned back to back in 16 and 17, there's really not like a lot to be said for it. So like, it's funny, like as a Raider fan, we get made fun of all the time. Oh, you guys live in the past. And you hear from Donkey fans, you hear from Charger fans, you hear it even from Chiefs fans, but really like, all right, we live in the past, but what the heck have you guys been doing while we've been sucking this whole time? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's funny when you actually look at it. So Kyle, let me ask you, what's the feasibility of the Chiefs making noise finally in the postseason, or is this going to be another one and done? Now, I got a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, but try to take your fandom hat off because you know what I mean, just a little bit. You know what I mean? Because and that's almost an unfair thing to even ask you to do because I know you're a passionate fan. But what do you think? Like, what does this look like for you guys?
What realistically is it could go any way. To be honest with you, our offense is Super Bowl caliber without a question, even without Kareem Hunt now, and after all that happened, because Spencer Ware and Damian Williams are a good combo at running back that can play. Our problem is the defense. Now, we had a run about midseason where the defense was playing really well. We were getting a ton of sacks. Dee Ford, Justin Houston, Chris Jones, who is, in my opinion, is one of the better young up-and-coming defensive players in the league. But our problem has been all season, our secondary is absolutely terrible. Kendall Fuller, who I like and is probably our best cornerback, at best is a number 2 cornerback in the NFL. There is no number 1. Our best defensive player, truthfully, in the secondary, Eric Berry, just now coming back. It's been rookies. It's been guys off the scrap heap. Orlando Scandrick, if I never see him again, I'll be more than happy. But the truth is if we get home field advantage in the playoffs, which right now is the likely scenario, you've got to like our chances with playing at home against Arrowhead, Mahomes at quarterback, even with how you guys are going. Because I do question, and I'm going to ask you guys this because you guys had such an emotional win this past Monday night. Does that kind of maybe drain some of your emotion going into this Sunday's game at all? But I mean,
as a fan, or you think for the team?
For the team.
I don't think so, because they haven't let up at all yet, whether it's coming off a big win like Pittsburgh or it's coming off a devastating loss like the Niners. That's the one thing that I will give Gruden, is that this team the effort has been repeated and replicated week in, week out, despite the results of the prior performance. What do you think, Kev?
Well, okay, I don't think it's going to affect the Raiders too much going into this because of where they stand and what they have or have not to play for. I think there's some pride on the line here, and beating the Chiefs would be a great way to end the season. But I want to touch on what Kyle's saying about how he's feeling about the Chiefs' chances going into the postseason here. And I got to say this: it seems like the Chiefs, when you look up teams that have made it to the Super Bowl, they're usually good on both sides of the ball, maybe one more than the other. Seattle obviously had the defense with the Legion of Boom. With Patriots, you got the offense. But the Patriots' defense has always played pretty well to get them to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
You look at the Saints this year. Their defense is a lot better this year, and that's going to help them going deep into the playoffs. And that's why I think they're favored for the NFC Championship here. When it comes to the Chiefs, lately they've been very competitive going into the playoffs, but they've never had a great balance of both the defense and the offense. But I think that way the offense is rolling right now, that's really what's going to carry them on. And I think over the last 10 years, this is the best Chiefs team I've seen and has the best chance to win a playoff game and go into the next step.
I would agree. And, I used to make fun of the Chiefs a lot and about Alex Smith and about how he couldn't complete a pass further than 15 yards downfield. And it was like, and it was that whole risk taking, lack of explosive plays that came from an Alex Smith led offense. Well, that problem has changed or been fixed. Like there's no more explosive team, or at least capable of it, than the Chiefs with the speedsters and the playmakers that they have. So let me ask you this, Kevin, I'll start with you. As far as if you had to pick a team far as a 5-year outlook goes, knowing all the talent that the Chiefs have, knowing all the talent that the Raiders are void of currently, but have the ability to then hopefully backfill with a lot of cap space, a lot of draft picks coming, I'm talking about organizationally from top to bottom. So coach, quarterback, you name it. Who's got the better 5-year outlook as of today?
Well, right now, until I see what the draft picks do for the Raiders, I unfortunately have to say the Chiefs because of the talent that they have on offense right now. The big question is their defense. But if you were to ask me that same question next year, I might have a different answer. But right now, with Mahomes and that offense they've got going on, those weapons, I got to give it to them right now. And I think that going into the next few seasons, the biggest stumbling ground for the Raiders will be the Chiefs.
So Kyle, let me ask you, and that's a great answer, Kevin. And I want to ask you, Kyle, we talked a little bit on the End Zone about how the Chiefs have a window right now because they don't have to pay Mahomes, but they're going to have to pay him. So I ask you the same question, but with the caveat, who's got the better 5-year outlook with the better year 4 and 5, Chiefs or Raiders?
Okay, well, here's the thing. They've got 4 more seasons of Mahomes on his rookie deal.
Okay, they got 4 more of him. Okay,
yeah,
all right. So
4 more of him on his rookie deal.
So then year 5 then, I guess.
Yeah, because they have the 5th-year option choice.
Okay, fair enough. Right.
So you've got that. Kansas City is going to have a couple of tough decisions in this offseason as far as Justin Houston goes. Justin Houston's got a huge contract that they paid him a few years ago. Justin Houston can't stay healthy. And when it's very obvious he's declined. Plus, D Ford's entering a contract year. And that's going to be a tough decision for Kansas City because D Ford has been very inconsistent in his career. So they've got some choices there. I think it's easier to fix a defense than it is an offense. So I still like Kansas City. I think in the next 5-year window, I think they make some serious. But when you have the biggest piece, you have Patrick Mahomes, and if you have that, it doesn't take much to turn it around. We talk about like the history in the AFC, especially in the AFC when we talk about the Chiefs over the years in this current run. But I also go back to this aspect. Have we really in our lifetimes ever seen anything like this Patriots dynasty? Where it's just like how many teams I compare it to the NBA when we talk about Michael Jordan and the Bulls blocking so many great players from actually winning NBA titles. It's been kind of like that in the AFC with the way the Patriots have been. And we mentioned Alex Smith. I do want to give a shout out to Alex Smith and if you ask any Chiefs fan, they're going to say this. We give Alex Smith a lot of credit for where Patrick Mahomes is as a quarterback because Alex Smith taught Patrick Mahomes how to be a professional quarterback. And that is a huge deal. So with that, the Chiefs fans are always going to be eternally grateful to Alex. I think the 5-year outlook for both teams is a lot more positive than it is for the Chargers or the Broncos because the Phillip Rivers era is coming to a close. The Broncos are a mess. The biggest thing for the Raiders, and again, this is going back from my Tampa Bay experience with John Gruden, is can Gruden evaluate the talent? And It's not to be a knock on Gruden, but you go back and look at Gruden's draft pick history in Tampa, it's ugly. It is very ugly.
Sure. And I absolutely, I think that's the fair knock on Gruden is his ability to evaluate talent, and just like there's a knock against everyone. The one on Andy Reid is whether he can win in the postseason or not, because the furthest he's ever taken a team was the Eagles in the year that they got beat by the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So what do you think there? Is that just an easy target for us as Raider fans to be like, your coach sucks in the postseason, or is there a reality to his shortcomings based on coaching style or whatever? What do you think?
I think with Andy Reid, it's a very interesting case because I do think Andy Reid is a good football mind. You look at what he's outputted in both Philadelphia and Kansas City. He's never put out a bad football team. The years he did, he either had injuries or was Donovan McNabb's rookie year. And the question I have with Andy Reid is I think sometimes Andy Reid gets in his own way. I even look at like last year, we beat the Texans to get our first playoff win in a good while. Against the Steelers, Andy Reid got pass happy. He had Kareem Hunt running everywhere, and all of a sudden it was Alex Smith, throw the ball. I think Andy Reid gets in his own way at times, and I think that is a problem. This year for Kansas City, one of the things Andy Reid's done is he actually has stepped back. If you look, when the defense is out there playing, it's Bob Sutton running the show. Andy Reid is talking to Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. So I think if Kansas City's defense lets them down, you could see a change there. Bob Sutton could be out, and they'll bring somebody in, possibly like a Todd Bowles if he's fired from the Jets. I'd love to see him come in and kind of take over that defense. There's going to be some overhaul there. There has to be some overhaul there. You know, I had somebody bring up to the fact that we traded Marcus Peters to the Rams in the offseason. That, yes, we lose talent there, but that guy cost us several games with stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Penalties. I mean, the Raiders game we talk about.
Yeah, that was a huge one. Yeah,
3 or 4 of them. Then, so I think Kansas City and the Raiders have a very similar window, and it's questions of unknowns on both teams. I mean, to be fair, what's going to happen with Gruden and his evaluation of talent? How much more talent is he going to purge out from the Raiders at this point? Because he's done a pretty good purge, and how is some of this young talent going to step up, and how is he going to add? He's got 3 number 1 picks. What can he add from there? He's one of those that's got to hit. Right. Very clearly. But with Kansas City, it's more of, can Andy Reid get out of his own way? And the one thing I've seen with Patrick Mahomes this year is that I think Patrick Mahomes can prevent Andy Reid from getting in his own way, because I think Patrick Mahomes at points in this season has basically taken the game over himself, and Andy's not going to say anything because he has complete trust in Patrick Mahomes.
Right. Good deal. All right. Great stuff, Kyle. All right. So you guys up for a little debate?
Yeah, I'm always up for a debate.
All right. Here we go.
It's 2-on-1. I'm good with that.
No, well, I'm gonna play moderator. I'm gonna play fair. Okay. Although I have a very slanted opinion on this, I will moderate this debate fairly. Okay. So I will start out. I want to start with Kevin. Okay, Kevin. Which team has the best fans and why?
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I was thinking back to how I was saying that I respect the Chiefs, even though I don't like them. The reason why is because they have a great fan base. And that's one of my kind of criterias when I do judge teams, is how is their fan base? And I look at Buffalo Bills, you know, I look at Cleveland fans, you know, and there's just certain fan bases I can't stand. Cowboys, gosh, can't stand them because they're so fair weather. You know, when the Cowboys start losing, you see what's going on. So, but I respect the Chiefs fans. I've met a lot of great Chiefs fans. And also, too, I have a lot of Raider fans that love to go to Arrowhead Stadium to watch games there, because of the fans there, but also it's a classic football stadium. It's a great place to see a game. But I'm sorry, Raider fans win pat over any other fan base ever anywhere.
Kyle, rebuttal?
Oh, yes, I will have a rebuttal. First of all, Raiders fans don't win pat per se. Now,
just you hold on a second, man. I said I was going to be fair, but then you start off with that. All right, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Kyle.
The cheating Raider fans, as I would say. Here's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We have audio difficulties now. I'm sorry. We're losing you, Kyle. I'm sorry. You broke up. We missed you there. Let's try it again.
Vegas, baby, Vegas. It's all about Vegas. No, okay.
Go ahead. For all fairness, go ahead. Tell us what.
Chiefs fans are incredibly loyal to their team, whether they are been bad or good. They have been incredibly loyal. It is, in my opinion, one of the top 2 toughest environments to play in the NFL. The other being Seattle, in my honest opinion. We hold the record for the loudest stadium noise. Chiefs fans, thick and thin. It's that Midwestern togetherness. They've got that. And here's how I view Raider fan, because I do think Raider fans are a top 3 fan base in the NFL. But here's the problem with Raider fans. You have 2 types of Raider fan. You have core Raider fan, you guys, the diehard Oakland Raiders fans. But you have all these fringe guys because you used to be the LA Raiders, and now you have all these fringe people because now you're the Las Vegas Raiders. You have one of the best core Raiders.
What kind of crap are you talking about?
Thank you, Kevin. I don't want to yell at your friend, but dude, have at him.
Our LA Raider fans, man, we are diehard, and I'm speaking up for them because I was an LA Raider fan. We still have LA Raider fans. You have a bunch of LA fans listening to Raider Fan Radio because we love the Raiders, even though they're moving. Now they're like nomads. Come on, man.
And besides that,
that's the thing. See, Kyle, you look at it as a splintered fan base. It's Raider Nation for a reason. It's because we're global, dude. We're in your backyard. Hold on a minute. We're in your backyard. We're in your house, literally, dude. You live with the Raider fan. We are everywhere. Okay.
Yeah, but wait a minute.
So now look, I was with you, and I promise I'm playing nice because I love you. But you can't go and all off and call us like, oh, we're broken up into the. No, that's one of the things that makes it beautiful, man.
How many of those Los Angeles fans have become Rams fans because the Rams are going to lead to the Super Bowl? You can't. LA
None
fans
that I know. None that I know.
They're not fickle. But here's the other thing.
All right, go ahead.
I will say to this is Kansas City fans fill up Charger games just as much as Raider fans do.
Right, fair enough. And I was gonna ask you that because I know you're out of market. You live in Florida now, and I'm out of market. Kevin's out of market. We're all out of market of the teams that we root for, despite us having connections back to those teams and the markets that they originated in. But what's it like? So for when you're abroad, like I know what, and we've talked to Kevin at length about this, about the awesome stories he has about being a Raider fan overseas, and you know what I mean, and all the awesome people he's met and the encounters that he's had. What about as a Chiefs fan in Florida? Do you ever bump into other Chiefs?
I've run into several Chiefs fans. There's some great Chiefs fans all over the country.
Are they new Chiefs fan? Like are they only like a year old?
Yeah, no, but I will say this, and I do think this is actually one of the things that helps Raider fan and gets them, because the NFL has always made the Raiders one of their premier teams because of the silver and black and especially the John Madden football and all that. A lot of people identify with the Raiders, and because of NFL films, and obviously NFL films, especially in the 70s, really featured a lot of Raiders, and that got out worldwide. And I think the Raiders fans do pull a lot of fans from that worldwide, thanks to the NFL exposure of the Raiders, especially from those old NFL films times. And unfortunately, when NFL films was most prominent, it really wasn't when the Chiefs were prominent. And so that was to their advantage. But you know what? What's funny is I say this as a Chiefs fan, the play that I think got a lot of people's attention is maybe not even a play that necessarily went the Chiefs' way, but it's one of the greatest NFL film moments in history is when Steve Atwater and Christian Okoye met head-to-head on Monday Night Football.
That was beautiful. So, hey, as a fan that can't stand either one of those teams, that was a beautiful moment in the league, man. That was awesome. That was Titans going at it there, not by team name, obviously, but by, just studs on both sides of the ball. And the way that Atwater, man, what was he giving up? 50 pounds probably to Christian Okoye. That was pretty impressive. So, all right. So real quick here, we're starting a little bit short on time. So I do want to hit a couple more, if you guys are up for it. So you told us about what it's like as a fan abroad, but Kyle, who are your most favorite players? We like to call it the Mount Rushmore question. Now, in our terms of our fandom, because there's 4 people on Mount Rushmore, we spot you Al Davis. Well, I don't know if spotting you Lamar Hunt is I don't know if he's revered he's not.
I'll tell you who can spot me. You can spot me Hank Stram.
Okay. Fantastic. Speaking of old NFL films, that was, again, I mentioned my early exposure.
Matriculating down the field.
That was great. And that's still a great one. And so we spot you Hank Stram. Who's the next 3 on your Chiefs Mount Rushmore?
Chiefs Mount Rushmore next 3. The great Derek Thomas.
Absolutely.
Taken from his career and this world way too soon. I think at the time, just as good of a linebacker as Lawrence Taylor. Impacted games in ways I've never seen anybody impact a game. So he is up there. I think if you're a Kansas City fan, it's Len Dawson. Len Dawson, Super Bowl winning quarterback, probably truthfully the most historic Chiefs player as far as NFL annals go in a long time. And for me, number 3, if you're spotting me, Hank Stram, the greatest tight end in NFL history, Tony Gonzalez.
Oh, interesting. Even though he was a Falcon?
You know what? In today's day and age of the NFL, where free agency is so prominent, come on. When we can talk about Joe Montana finishing his career in the Chiefs jersey, Eric Dickerson finishing his career in a Rams jersey, Emmitt Smith finishing his career in a Cardinals jersey.
Sure.
I think
Charles Woodson being a friggin' Packer for the middle prime of his career. Sure.
Yeah. So, I think that's something you kind of have to throw out a little bit when you talk about more modern players, is you've got to consider if they've spent more than 10 years they spent over 75% of their career with the NFL team. I think that's saying something in today's modern NFL.
I think those are great choices, man. Being a non-fan, but just being somebody from a distance and having them as a rival, certainly most impactful. And as a kid, when we form a lot of our fandoms, that Super Bowl NFL Films video of the Chiefs, beating the Vikings is that Super Bowl 4, right?
Yeah, Super Bowl 4.
Super Bowl 4. So you mentioned Hank Stram, obviously, and then Lenny Dawson, maybe one of the most iconic photos in NFL history is Lenny Dawson at halftime smoking a heater and drinking a Pepsi or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a great bit. And so if you haven't seen that NFL Films, we're coming up on the season of NFL Films where they replay every single Super Bowl on NFL Network repeatedly on a loop. They go through every single one of them. Watch those, man. Those are the best NFL films. And that one of those Chiefs is, despite my despise for that team, that's a great episode of NFL Films. So definitely go and check that out. All right, Kevin, one more for you here. So and Kyle, we're gonna let you close the show, but before we do, let's go to Kevin. So Kev, what do you think we're going to see this weekend? Give us your prediction, not only maybe by score, but what kind of can we expect to see this Sunday unfold there in Arrowhead?
Well, I'm hoping they let Doug Martin run all over that defense. And we need to give it to our new tight end and our number 88 wide receiver.
Marcel Aitman and Darren Waller getting the athletes in the mix. I'm with you. I like Darren Waller, man. He's excited. When you're 6'6" and you run a 4.4, like that's pretty cool, man. I'm with you. So
I want to see the Raiders be aggressive, take some more chances, some smart football play too, like what happened with the run back there from the punt, from the last game.
So
that was smart football play. We need
so good. So what? And then what about? Give me a little bit of your off-season outlook, Kevin. What do you think's the biggest things that the Raiders need to address here? Because we don't have a postseason to play for like the Chiefs do. So what do you think? What's a number one on the list of our off-season moves, Kev?
Finding some type of general manager, I guess, because we need someone to address these contracts that we got to start working on for the logistically, that's what we need right now. We need someone to fill Reggie's shoes, someone that our coach can work with, but also keep our coach in check. So before we start thinking about draft and free agency, and then after we get that, I think that the free agency, we really need to start filling some holes there first. That will dictate what we go first in the draft. Because obviously we're not going to get Bosa, which is the pick that everyone wants. And it's funny, when I was in Cincinnati, I saw a couple people with jerseys that had the tape on the back that said Bosa on them.
Too soon.
My answer is not a sexy answer, but it's a realistic one.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's got to start there, man, because and I think you touch on a key point.
You got to start from the top and then go down.
Yeah, and you touch on a key point that, and even Kyle mentioned earlier about Gruden as a talent evaluator. He's going to need help, and whether that's somebody that has direct influence over it, or even just an advisory type role, just somebody to nudge him a little bit. You know what I mean, to help him with this stuff.
One other thing I would like to see too is I'd like to know where we're going to play next year.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that would be nice. Now, guys, real quick, when you talk about Gruden and talent evaluators,
yeah.
If the name Bruce Allen comes up, be afraid. Be very afraid.
Yeah, we've heard that a few times now. I don't know. I personally, I think it could go a Holmgren direction, but Scott McLuhan's another one that's been thrown out there. There's definitely been a handful. Now you got Louis Riddick campaigning for the job, so speaking nice about the Raiders on ESPN, so that was interesting. But anyway, so
actually Riddick would be a good pick. I like.
Well, see, and that's people that think that, yeah. So it'll be interesting. But I'm with you, Kevin. I think that's definitely the immediate direction of the team, because that's going to influence the draft and everything else going forward, and that $80 million that we're going to have and how to spend it. All right, Kyle, here's your chance, buddy. We're gonna let the Chiefs fan close out the episode of Raiders Fan Radio here. Give us your predictions about the weekend, and then what you expect to see the Chiefs do on the short notice after the regular season's over.
Well, this is a huge game for Kansas City. They're playing for all the marbles in the AFC as far as getting home field advantage and having that bye week. They're going to be playing everybody. I think Patrick Mahomes has a lot to play for too. Kansas City's, and all their losses this season, I think combined, they've lost all the games they've lost. It's been a total of like 12 points combined. They lost by a point to the Patriots. They lost by a point to the Chargers. They lost by 3 to Seattle. It's been tight every game that they've lost. I think Kansas City comes fired out in Arrowhead. I think just the talent rises above. As good as the Raiders looked Monday night, and they did look like they're advancing, there's just too much weapons on the Kansas City offense for them to be able to handle them on a defensive end. And I think Kansas City's pass rushers especially are going to come up fired up. It could be a very long day for Derek Carr. We kind of beat the hell out of him in the first game, and I think it's going to be more of the same. I think it's competitive because it is Chiefs Raiders. I think maybe the final score you're looking at maybe a 31-24 game somewhere in there. It's not going to be a blowout. If it's a blowout, even I will be shocked. After that, if winning, we get the home field advantage. To be honest with you, it could go either way. We could get on a hot streak and ride it. But what scares me, and I'll be honest, is even if we get that bye week, we could be looking at playing the San Diego Chargers again right out of the gate. Yeah. And that's probably right now, truthfully, the two best teams in the AFC. So it is hard to say. When the Chargers are your 5th seed, they would go play the lower seed. And it's something that I've always said is that they need to reseed the NFL and go by playoffs and go by record. I think that, especially once you get into the second round, it's just something I've truly believed, because, the Chiefs Chargers should be an AFC championship game matchup, not.
I'm with you, instead of a divisional. Yeah.
Second round. Yeah. I think, are we capable of winning the Super Bowl? I think we are. I think we have to improve the defense. We have to play like we were if we can play even like we were at the middle of the season, where at the time we were the best team against third down conversions in the NFL. We were getting a ton of sacks. The secondary is going to get better. They're getting a bunch of guys back this week. Fuller will be back from his hand injury. Ron Parker is going to be back in the lineup. Eric Berry, every game that goes on that he plays, it's going to get better. So I think the Chiefs are a legitimate shot to win the Super Bowl. I think the window is just opening up with Patrick Mahomes. Even if we don't make it to the Super Bowl this year, I think this season has been above expectations, considering we were starting a first-year starting quarterback and nobody saw this coming. Does Mahomes fall back to earth a little bit next season? A very good possibility. Kevin is crying with his Chucky doll.
I love it.
Kansas City does need to address defense in the offseason, and I think their entire draft, maybe a running back. We don't know. I'd like to see him throw somebody in the mix. There's always a possibility Kansas City continues to just say, we're just going to overpower you with offense. There's been some Le'Veon Bell rumors.
Ooh. Wow. That would be scary. Yeah. Okay.
But I think no matter what, I think as a Chiefs fan, even if we don't win the Super Bowl and there's that disappointment, even if it's a one and done in the playoffs again, I think we have to know we have a quarterback and our future is bright going forward. And I think, like Kevin said earlier, I think it's the Chiefs, the Raiders is the future of the AFC West for the next 10 years. And it's wide open. San Diego's window's about to shut. Denver's a mess. Chiefs Raiders for the next 10 years. This could be one of the peak points of Chiefs Raiders rivalry.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that we could be on the cusp of both of these teams being competitive year in, year out for the foreseeable future. Both of them are going to have coach and quarterback, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So absolutely. So guys, this has been a great discussion, man. This has been fun. Nothing better than to really dig in to one of the best rivalries that there is in sports. And I couldn't have had two better guests to have done that with. So I want to thank Kyle and Kevin from the Fandom Podcast Network for joining me here on this RFR conversation. So you can find them at fpnet.podbean.com. Look for their show, The Endzone, for all you football fans. And if you're a fan of anything else, just scroll through there and you'll find everything but a wrestling show.
We currently have 10 shows that you could choose from. So,
and believe it or not, every once in a while we do a wrestling show.
Do you really?
Yes, we do have a wrestling show. And just real quick, I gotta say something to Raiders fans out there, because I do have a lot of respect for Raiders fans, especially you Oakland Raiders fans. I feel for you with this whole situation. You are some of the best fans in the NFL. What you guys did Monday night was one of the better moments in league history, as far as fan moments go. And I'm sorry that it's ending this way in Oakland, because the Raiders should always be in Oakland. That's the history. And I'm sorry, as Raider fans are Raiders fans, but the Las Vegas Raiders are never going to sound quite right to me.
Well, I appreciate you. Kyle,
known as the Raiders.
Yeah, right. Well, we always ask our guests for a message to Raider Nation, Kyle, to close it out, but you just gave it right there, brother. And I appreciate that, because it's fandom is a very personal thing for us, and and it's important to keep it in perspective in terms of how it relates to real life. But it's a thing that we're deeply connected to, man. And the idea that the team is leaving again, kind of rattles us up a little bit. So I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate that sentiment. Coming from a Chiefs fan, man, that definitely means a lot. Kevin, you got any parting words for Raider Nation before we let you guys get out of here?
Oh, let's go in there. Let's be competitive. And man, if we could pull off a win here against the Chiefs, it would really take the bad taste out of this bad season.
Absolutely.
It's not going away.
Well, gentlemen,
I was hoping we would not let the Chiefs fan have the final word.
I know. I'll edit him out, Kevin. Don't tell him, but I'll edit him out. Okay, and I'm going to talk about him like he's not here too. Okay. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for joining us here on Raiders Fan Radio. I hope it was fun for you, despite Kevin and I taking shots at you. Kevin, thank you for being a backup as always. You guys have become great friends and to our show, and I thank you to all that you have done to welcome us into your fold and me into your fold, and glad to return the favor anytime. You all are both always welcome on anything that we do on the Murph's Fan Cave Network. So thank you again for joining me here tonight for this RFR conversation.
Absolutely. It's been a blast.
All right, guys. Have a good night. We'll see you. Go Raiders.
Go Raiders.
You brought up Patrick Mahomes. So Kevin, let me ask you this. Who's your favorite Muppet?